So, like many people, I've been following developments in Ukraine in the past few days, where things have really gotten bad. Um, if you've been watching the news, you'll know there was a very bloody violence in Kiev in the last few days, and some reports are suggesting as many as 100 people may have been killed. Um, the question is this Ukraine's Tiananmen Square moment? There's a few angles I'd like to take on this. First of all, the negotiations underway are important, and I hope they hold. I think the greatest danger from this situation could be Ukraine turning into the next Yugoslavia, whereby there's a very violent partition and it turns into actually a civil war, which I hope doesn't happen. But someone said there comes a point when so many people die there is no going back. Now, if about 100 people have died, there's going to be deep anger on the ground, and it's going to be very difficult to turn the situation around. The latest development, obviously this is a sort of situation where developments move fast, but the latest I've heard is that Yanukovych has left the country, and there's going to be an election called an early election for, I believe, May the 25th. But there's a real risk that that's still over. Let's see, this is February, that's 3 months away. Anything can happen in 3 months, and it's definitely a very tense situation. I've just watched a video where Vitaly Klitschko, one of the opposition leaders, former world heavyweight boxer for those of you who don't know, was booed by the crowd. He's been called a traitor because he's been trying to negotiate. I can understand both sides. I can understand him as an opposition leader trying to be responsible by having negotiations. On the other hand, when people have seen the friends killed in cold blood, it's very hard to be in any sort of reconciling mood, and that's the real danger here. This it reminds you of some of the bloody revolutions in 1989, and it's ominous. It's definitely a tense situation. Now, I'm not going to say as a fact it was the security forces responsible for the violence, and there were policemen killed as well, I understand. I'm not going to say that because I wasn't there, but I did see an interview with a doctor, and she said that she personally witnessed government officials firing indiscriminately at the crowd or unarmed civilians. So this, if that's the case, that is a Tiananmen Square moment, and it's really quite shocking. And she also said that she wasn't biased. She was asked by the journalist, like, as opposition to the government, and she said, no, I'm not opposition, I'm just a Ukrainian citizen, I'm a doctor, I've treated policemen as well. So there has been violence on both sides, but ultimately there's a lot of things that are worth pointing out in this. The Russian perspective, of course, Russia has a huge stake in it. RT has been reporting about of course with a bias, saying, oh, the protests are violent, they don't respect democracy. After all, Yanukovych is a democratically elected leader. Well, he is a democratically elected leader, that is a fact. However, he has been behaving increasingly like a dictator, and any leader that orders fire to be opened on civilian protesters automatically loses any moral credibility. Now, like I say, there's been violence on both sides, and I think there's definitely hardcore elements among the protesters, like far-right factions, and people who are, I'm sure, have blood on their hands as well. So it's not a straight-cut case of the government has cut people down. Nevertheless, the government has responded with brute force, and the Russian position, you have to question it, because ever since the Cold War ended, ever since the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia, as the major power within the Soviet Union, has been absolutely hell-bent on trying to insert its influence on satellite countries, whether they be former Soviet republics or former Warsaw Pact countries, and Ukraine's no exception. Let's not forget the times that Russia has simply cut off gas whenever they've had a dispute with Ukraine. Russia has enormous influence in Ukraine. Um, and Russia has a track record of bullying smaller countries into basically being influenced under its sphere. It seems to me Ukraine's sort of being used as a chessboard. Um, in World War II, it was some of the bloodiest battles were fought in Ukrainian soil. The battles of Kharkov, for example, the Battle of Kiev, um, the Dnieper offensive. And now what we're seeing is Ukraine is once again being used as a sort of chessboard between East and West. I don't want to see a partition because I believe that would lead to more bloodshed. I think the best thing now is that definitely Yanukovych has to go. There's absolutely no way his position can be credible after what's happened. But the protesters also have responsibility. At the moment, Ukraine is on an absolutely fragile position, and anything could happen. If this gets worse and neither side backs down, it could actually lead to a civil war, which is not a term I use lightly. But so many people have died now. It's a very, very critical moment. There's going to need to be reconciliation. There's going to need to be an independent inquiry into what happened, and there's going to have to be justice for the people who are responsible. So basically, it's a very, very tense situation in Ukraine right now, and let's all hope it doesn't get worse.